It's time for Zeb at the Ranch with your host Zeb Bell and newsworthy and noteworthy John Ellis. This podcast will always be brutally honest with integrity and honesty and without low-class, no-class cursing that's in vogue today with illiterate politicians. Now, Zeb at the Ranch.
Wow, we're off and running like a herd of horses, and I'm really looking forward to this podcast with my dear friend John Ellis. I'm Zeb Bell, Zeb at the Ranch, and of course, right off the get-go, I'm going to say that if you have any comments, and I'm sure you probably will, be sure and let us know by going to my email, zeb@theranch@hotmail.com. We'd welcome any and all your comments. Without further ado, I say good morning or good afternoon, whichever time zone you're in, to my dear friend John Ellis. Good morning.
Well, for vampires like me, this is good morning.
You don't go to bed very often at a proper time.
Well, most people wouldn't think that. I usually am in bed about 3:30 a.m. in the morning and don't get up till about 9:47 to be exact.
You know, John, there's so many things in the news right now, and I really appreciate your being a part of this program, not only for your technology and your ability, etc., but also your commentary. One of the things that I wanted to talk about first and foremost today in an issue that I'm very upset about, because it could be my daughter, my granddaughter, your children, whatever. The blonde girl from Ukraine, Iryna Zarutska, 23 years of age, left the war zone of Ukraine, came to this country, wanted to establish America as her home base, murdered in cold blood on a train, a transit train in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it wasn't even hardly touched by the news for a matter of days after her death.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy event, and from what I'm reading, it was something that would be totally preventable. This criminal that attacked her has had problems in the past and has been getting out on the no cash bail, which is a huge problem. You know, I think after that armed robbery, I think he should have been in prison for the rest of his life. And if he gets out of prison, then he probably should have had a drug test every day to make sure he was taking his antipsychotic medications, but certainly not just turned loose in the wild like he was.
Let's break this down a little bit. First of all, the girl got on the train, walked to an open bench seat that was right in front of the perpetrator, the killer, and sat down and was on her phone. She had just left her job working in a pizzeria. And all of a sudden, in the video, you can see he gets up with a knife in his hand and starts stabbing this girl. And everybody that was sitting around did nothing. There was no movement. There was no shrieking. There was no yelling or screaming. There was no one coming to her assistance. And the girl in the video, and it's so sick and sad, kind of balled up into a fetus position on the bench, knowing that she'd been injured severely, and she bled to death, and nobody lended a hand whatsoever. Is being a good Samaritan and helping people in our society, is it dead?
Well, you know, when I looked at that and I thought about 9/11, which is tomorrow, and something to think about. You remember that airplane where everybody was on board and they said, "All right, let's ride.
Let's go."
And they as a group took those people down and did the right thing. You know, from that time to this time, have we lost that? You know, to where people just look around and don't do a thing about it. I pity the fool that tries something like this when me and my wife are present, because we already have a plan. Say, for example, we're sitting at McDonald's, somebody starts shooting the place up. I'm going to go get the bullet. She's going right behind me, and she's going to get the shooter.
Yeah.
Because if you don't stop them, they're just going to keep going. And those people on that train that look the other way, they are real lucky that guy didn't come after them as well.
You know, and here's the point, too. You mentioned that about go after him. Look at Daniel Penny. In his case, in New York City on the subway.
Yep.
He saved probably people's lives, and I'm saying that plural, people's lives.
Yep.
And also the brutality of the moment. Sure, he put him in a headlock, a chokehold, but I hate to sound calloused and crass, I couldn't care less about the perpetrator.
I agree with you on that. You know, for him to get in trouble over that is ridiculous.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. He did the right thing and he got in trouble for it. Whatever happened happened to the idea that Hillary Clinton put forth that we have a community, that we raise everybody in a community? Well, let's start acting like a community and stand up to these thugs that do these types of acts. If everybody on that train, those 4 or 5 people that were sitting in that area, got after him at the same time, he wouldn't have had a chance.
Did you look at the callousness of the video? And the perpetrator, the alleged killer, which I hate that word alleged, you could see him on the video.
Yep,
I mean, you don't need to do anything else.
Yep.
Very slowly and with great purpose, walked through the rail car with the knife in his hand, dripping blood on the floor, and there was hardly anybody that looked at the guy.
Yeah. It was just a Tuesday for everybody there, apparently.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been freaking me out, and I would have been doing something about it. Here's the thing. I've got a death wish. People think I'm suicidal because they might see me in the store, and I'll say, well, I'll see you later unless I get lucky and die. And has he got a problem, John? No, I want to go to heaven. I want to go home. So I'm like Tim Robbins. I pity the fool that comes across me and tries something like that, because I'm not afraid to go, and I'll put him down.
You know, but talk a little bit about the laws. You know, this is something that, and I'm going to be very blunt and say this up front, and then we can dissect it from there. I absolutely am a proponent of the death penalty.
Right.
In this case, I don't think there should even be a trial. I know you're saying, well, he has his constitutional rights, etc. He's been arrested 14 times for various and sundry crimes against society.
Oh, yeah.
And now we have to worry about the costly trial of his slashing brutally a 23-year-old girl that her goal was to come and live in America.
Yeah.
And he's going to get all the social amenities of our Constitution and our law, and maybe live and really have a good life inside prison.
Well, you know, I'm against the death penalty for a number of reasons, but if there was ever a case for one,
bingo,
this is it.
Bingo.
You know, it's just clear as can be, and it's brutal. And I'm sorry, I don't see where this guy's going to ever be reformed. I hope he is, but his rap sheet tells me he's not going to be, and he's just going to be a problem for society. So I would at least advocate to put this man behind bars for the rest of his life. And
underground,
yeah.
Underground.
Yeah, I hear you.
But now let's get into the real crux of the problem, and that's the racial aspect of this thing. Right away, the Democrats and right away the left-wing political wingnuts came out and said that the politicization of this and also the news of the story lended credence for the GOP and enhanced law enforcement and everything, and they were against it. As a matter of fact, there were even some, John, that were trying to enhance a GoFundMe page for the perpetrator.
I couldn't believe I saw that. That was insane. Somebody's going to put some money up for this guy?
Yeah.
I don't get it, you know. I don't understand the soft on crime thing, and I'm with Morgan Freeman on the race thing. You know, the best way to end racism is let's stop talking about it.
Bingo.
You know?
Bingo.
And I think a problem people have is they feel guilty because they see somebody and they notice the color of their skin, and they feel like that in itself is racism, but it's not. If you look at a car, what's the first thing you see? It's a red car. It's a blue car. It's a black car. Who cares? It's content of character, not color of skin, that matters. And this guy's content of character, well, he has none, obviously.
Let me ask you, though, when you mention about color and skin color, and again, on this program, we will never avoid talking about very serious issues. They might be a little inflammatory. Some people might be incensed and mad that we're covering this. That's your problem. Go in the corner with your pillow and have a nice day. I don't care. But you know, there's been a lot of news media, including our local newspapers, that have decided on many of the most wanted posters they put inside the papers, not to mention what race or skin color.
Yeah, I personally, if you're going to put something in the paper like that, you've got to include height, weight, color of skin, male, female, all the basic information. Now, whether they committed a crime and has something to do with their race, I don't care about that. That doesn't, I don't believe in that. But you need to identify people, and the way you do it is, have they got 9 fingers or they have 10 fingers? Are
Absolutely.
they black, brown, white, orange? Who cares? You know.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Can you imagine the phoniness and the farceness, if that's a good word, of 3 guys go into a bank? And let's say they might be 3 white guys. They might be 3 Hispanics.
Yep.
They may be 3 black guys.
Yep.
And the news media says 3 men robbed a bank. Who are you going to look for?
Well, yeah. Yeah, you got to have some identifying features.
Absolutely.
You know.
And in this case, to say that this issue not being covered by the media, the CNNs, MSNBCs, and everything, as being racist, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it doesn't fit their narrative of what they wanted this to turn out to be. Now, if this had been a Trump-supporting, right-wing, nut job, white supremacist, they would have been screaming to high heaven about race. But because it was a black guy that killed a white girl, then they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine because I don't care what color he is. But like I said, you got to have some identifying features, and that's part of the job of the police. When they talk about a bank robber, they don't say he was wearing a ski mask. They say he was wearing a black ski mask or a blue ski mask, you know. So it's the same thing with that.
You know, we're in a society right now where nobody seems to care about anyone else. My wife and I, have lived in a rural area all of our married life. And you have to really be looking over your shoulder all the time in the rear view mirror. And a circumstance on a local basis for those of you listening around the world or in the United States, wherever right now, locally we had a circumstance right in your backyard in your town.
Oh, yeah, 4 murders in Burley, in the Rupert area. Yep.
Talk about that scenario a little bit. People are not safe in their own home.
No, they're not. And you know, and everybody thinks they're in the last times when it comes to God and Christ returning and all that stuff. But the Bible talks about a time when the people's love will grow cold. And I'm telling you, in my lifetime, I have seen a definite chilling in people's love for one another and love for your country, things that deserve love that aren't getting it, and just a coldness that's coming over people. You take a look at those people that were in that subway and the coldness to just sit there and watch that young lady be killed. How do you explain that? 40 years ago, that would not have happened.
Where and when and how did that enter our society? That feeling of isolating yourself and putting the blinders on like a racehorse and only looking one direction and not seeing what's going on around you. The killing of a young woman, and nobody really seemed to acknowledge it.
Yeah, you can guess and speculate and all that about when that happened, but personally, I think maybe Roe versus Wade, when our country finally decided we can define somebody as not being human, and so we have dehumanized everybody in our society so that we're no longer important. Life is no longer important, and so the only thing around that girl that might have happened differently is somebody could have picked up their phone and started recording it, because that seems to be in vogue today.
Absolutely.
You know, so I don't know. But it definitely seems to be changing.
Now, there were more than just women on that rail system, that transit system in Charlotte, North Carolina. And where were the men? Where are men to take over and see? And I'm only going by the video, but it looked very apparent to me that there were men within very close proximity that could have really tackled this guy and, quite frankly, held him at bay.
Yeah. Well, we live in a community, I think, still is not maybe touched as many as other places are, where men just wouldn't stand up for that. They would get up there and do something about it.
Absolutely. We live in a cowboys kind of an area here.
Exactly.
And I'm going to stand up and say this, Southern Idaho, Nevada, Utah, wherever you want to be, Wyoming, there is a cowboy mentality. And what's right is right and wrong is wrong. And there's not going to be a mixing of those.
Yeah, and you've got the men that'll stand up and put a stop to that, that'll stand up for what's right. You know, but who knows what's going to happen tomorrow if this continues.
But, you know, the big city attitude right now, when you look at the blue cities and blue states led by the blue governors and mayors of those cities, look at Chicago right now, man. Goodness sakes, Johnson, the mayor, and Pritzker, the governor of Illinois. It blows my cowboy mind to think that you would want to stop people from getting bad guys out of your city.
Yeah, I kind of understand where those governors are coming from to a point. If they're willing to do something about it, okay, fine, go after it. But they're going to sit on their thumbs and on their hands. And what options do you have? You have people in these cities that are begging for the National Guard to come in and help, for the military to come in and help. Is it a good situation? Is what we want in America? No. But until these governors are willing to put their foot down and put an end to this crime that's going on, somebody's got to go in and do it.
Well, what's the definition here, in your opinion, of overreach by the government? I mean, no, and I know that we're going to get into quite a debate on this, but when you start talking about bringing in the National Guard, like they did to D.C., which, by the way, is completely legal because that's a federal jurisdiction.
Sure.
But what about it? I would rather have the safe streets. I would like to take Deanne out to eat. I would like to let Deanne go shopping, etc. Or both of us go shopping in an area to where you don't have to be afraid about being hit in the head with a lead pipe, mugged or stabbed or whatever. Any way to eliminate crime, and I mean this, any way to eliminate crime, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I get that sentiment. I really do. And where you've got people that have their hands tied, they live in a city where you can't own a gun legally. The only people that have guns are the criminals.
Right.
There's no law that's going to fix that, you know. So, you know, that if they don't have an option, then they need to have somebody come in there and do it. And if the local police aren't going to happen and you can't defend yourself,
absolutely.
what other option have you got?
What about self-defense, though? You're bringing this up, and it's really a great topic. You mentioned you can't own a gun, and basically the innocent people are held to more obeyances by the government than what the perpetrators are.
Oh, yeah.
And carry a knife or whatever. I can honestly say that when I've gone to the big city, I never go without, and I'm not going to explain what it was, but I never go without carrying a weapon.
Yeah, I get that. I don't understand that because, and I get so tired of these liberals that say, we got to make more gun laws. We got to get these gun laws. Well, it doesn't matter what laws you have for guns because the only people that are going to obey that are people that aren't going to be using them in a crime.
Absolutely.
Criminals, I can go get any kind of gun I want in 24 hours, and I don't even have any contacts right at the moment, you know? Mm-hmm. So how is another law going to fix that? Personally, I'd like to see, you know, I was at Smith's the other day, and there was a guy ahead of me, and he was open carrying a pistol. I wanted to follow him around.
Yeah.
And not to keep an eye on him because I would have been safer with it.
Absolutely.
You know, because if he was going to come in there and shoot people up, he certainly wouldn't have been open carrying like that.
Where are we, though, as a nation, when you look at the maps of the red states, blue states, and the blue and the red leadership, you know, the GOP, the Republicans, and the red states, and then what's happening like in California? California is a mess. It's an absolute destitute mess.
Yep.
And go right across into the Midwest and look at Illinois with Pritzker.
Yeah.
And if Mondami, Zoran Mondami, becomes the mayor of New York City, you're going to have 24/7, 365 chaos.
Yep. That's all we need is a Marxist in charge of that mayorship. I don't know. And, that... I don't know where we're at with that, Zeb, because California is a beautiful place if you don't look at half the people that are there, you know, and that's the biggest problem. So I don't know. The people in California are going to have to figure this out for themselves, and same place every place else. But I don't know if they're going to because we're not in the right slope for that.
Why, in your opinion, and I know we're skipping around here quite a bit today on our first maiden voyage of Zeb at the Ranch podcast, but when you look at the state of California, and I've announced a lot of rodeos in California. I know the state very, very well. You get into the Red Bluffs. You get into the Clovis area. You get into Bakersfield. You get into those towns and communities. They are extremely conservative, and they understand what is right and what is wrong, what's legal and illegal. But the populaces of L.A., Sacramento, San Francisco, etc., I don't understand why they're the driving force because these people are under the harassment of crime and criminals 24/7.
Yeah, I don't know. They need to split it in half like they've been wanting to do forever and then dump the left half into the ocean.
Not a bad thought.
But did I say that out loud?
No, but really, there's got to be something done. And it's not just California. You're seeing the likes of which trying to spread. And I'll go back to Mondami in New York City. If he becomes mayor of that city with the free buses and the free food at the grocery stores, free subways and everything else, no protection, defund the police, etc. What in the world for the biggest, most important commerce city in the world? What would happen?
I don't know. It's just completely unbelievable to me because New York City, and I know we don't live in a purely capitalistic society. I wish we did, a free market capitalist society. But New York is, or was, the beacon of capitalism.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to turn it over to a Marxist?
Where did this come from? I mean, here we are, we're talking about Bernie Sanders and AOC, and we're talking about others that are standing up advocating at the rallies. This is the greatest achievement for us, the Democrats. Let's get behind this man. A 33-year-old man, Mondami, that's never had a job, never had responsibility in his life, and he's going to be the mayor of New York City?
Yeah, I don't know. It blows my mind, but I think it really comes down to, if you understand something about people, and this goes right to the Bible, we are basically by nature selfish.
That's right.
And we have to overcome that through God's grace. But most of the people, they only look at, what will this guy give me? And they don't think it costs anything. They think he can just give it to them, and it's very appealing. If I can have a pot and a chicken in it and it doesn't cost me anything, why wouldn't I want that? But that's not how it works, because it does cost you something. At the very minimum, it costs you your freedom.
Where did people get the idea? And you and I are getting a little long in the earlobes and the tooth, and gray in the hair. Of course, I think I'm the oldest one in the room right now.
You might be. And I have good genes from my dad, so I don't go gray very fast.
But where do you get the concept of replacing capitalism from the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, and replacing it with a government that would be socialist/communist that has fallen and been disproven anywhere else in the nation or the world's history?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's just a fundamental thing among people that they're just greedy and they want stuff for free. It used to be land of the free and home of the brave, and now I call it the land of the give it to me for free and the hope in the home of the enslaved. Because that's what we're turning into right now.
But you know where that's stemming from, and it's stemming from our education system, and all the way from kindergarten on up. How are we going to change that or renew the spirit of patriotism and allegiance to this great country and what it stands for?
Well, I think it starts at first with the family.
Bingo.
The smallest unit, the family, and then churches need to get involved and, stand up for what's right. As a libertarian, I don't believe in forcing people to do things. I think that at the very least, though, that we can be a salt and a light to the earth and be an example.
Absolutely. Pastor Alex Lissau is coming up in just a few minutes on this program with the Why Not God segment. And he and I, dear friend of mine, we've talked about this same situation in this country for many, many times. But education right now, are you a fan of or not of getting rid of the Department of Education?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person, man.
No, I'm not. I'm asking the right person.
You can get rid of that. You can get rid of that and a whole bunch of other stuff.
I just think that it needs to go or be completely revamped.
Yeah. Well, what I look at is I want my local school district to have control over my area, and I don't want any involvement from the feds.
And I would agree with that.
Now, if we have to work under this current system, the solution to schooling is the voucher system. You give every child the complete money, maintenance for school, school books, the cost of education. So maybe little Johnny gets $7,000 to $10,000 every year, and he can spend it where he wants to, on a private school.
Define that, though. Spend it where he wants to, or are there going to be some rules that you can't leave the bowling alley and go through the gutter to go use that money for something else?
Well, no. It'd have to apply for your education,
Right.
and obviously you're going to want some checks and balances along the way. I got to turn off this gesturing on your side because it's causing problems.
Oh, if I'm moving, I shouldn't.
No, your hands. But we'll talk about that later.
I will not move my hands again.
Yeah, but
I will mummify myself.
sure. If you want your child to go to a Catholic school or a LDS school or a Christian school, if you want to have your kid go to the Church of Satan school, I don't care. You're not going to have many people do that anyway. But if you let them choose where they go, you eliminate all the problems you've got in the schools today, because you have people that have their hands tied by the federal government about what they can and cannot do. Prayer in school. Well, maybe I want my child to have prayer in school, so I'm going to send him to a Christian school. Why should I be penalized for that? Mm-hmm. Why should I have to pay twice for that? Once for the public school system, once for the private. And that's the only way we're going to get a handle on our kids now.
I do know from stories that I've read, and as a matter of fact, I took one under consideration this morning. Deanne happened to find a very interesting story about education at home and how the left, they are absolutely going to do all they can to fight and stop homeschooling. What are your thoughts on that?
It breaks my heart because, well, for one thing, we homeschooled our children for several years, and then we sent them to a Christian school for part of those years, and then we put them in the public school system.
Right.
I love my kids, and I think they turned out great. But I think having that foundation in homeschool situation really helped them when they went into school. In fact, my youngest daughter, they wanted to put her ahead because she was so far ahead on things, So yeah, I know people think, oh, homeschooling, that means they're going to stay home and watch TV. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But I can guarantee they're going to get a better education the way the parents want it than they will by sending them to a public school.
I can honestly say, and I'm glad my wife's sitting in our studio with us because I think she would concur. We know a lot of families that are involved in homeschooling their kids. And I can say this of the ones that I know, that their children are extremely polite, extremely well-mannered, extremely well educated on the issues of what's going on, and also with the reading, writing, and arithmetic, if you will. And I'm very impressed with the homeschooling and the successes that they're getting with their children.
Oh yeah. I think the testing the reports that I've seen on kids that have been homeschooled, they test far better than the kids that are in the public school. And it's not saying that those kids in public school are more stupid. It's just that parents that are interested in teaching their kids at home generally are interested in their education. They want their kids to be smart.
And the other aspect of that, leave my hands alone. No, jump up here, Zach.
I think you're good now. I got that off.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Is the family. I love the cohesiveness of the family. I'm sitting here thinking of a family, a horse trainer that I know very well, and his family, and the kids, they are devoted to going to that kitchen table every morning and studying and doing their homeschooling. And then for the rest of the day, the family is a family unit, doing things, working together, playing together. That's something that today is pretty hard to find.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing about the homeschooling is what the liberals will say, and people that are against it, that they're going to miss out on the socialization. Well, personally, I think some of the socialization is what's causing the problem.
Oh, I agree.
If these kids socialize with their parents, with responsible adults, with responsible kids, they're going to learn to be responsible. If you send them into the cesspool, they're going to learn what cesspool teaches you.
Absolutely.
So
I do agree, though, that children need to have a peer association so that they can be involved in sporting activities or anything else to learn, maybe art or debate or whatever. You have to have those things to be a well-rounded individual.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem for most homeschoolers. People that do that typically are involved with their church group and they fellowship with other people, and their kids are involved in other things. Our kids were. But again, it's nobody's business but the parents.
I agree.
So even
but therein lies the problem. Parents are being pushed out of the picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So how do parents combat this? Here they want parents to go and attend school board meetings, and they want them to be more involved with this kind of a money drive for more new basketball uniforms or whatever. But yet at the same time, many schools won't even contact their parents of the children if a children wants to turn his life around and all the gender idiocy, etc.
Yeah.
And they won't let the parents know.
Yeah. I come from a time when if you went on a field trip, you had to have permission.
I did too.
Now, when my kids went to school, in the public schools, it was backwards. You had to have a signed statement that you don't want them to go on that field trip. That's backwards. If my kid leaves the school, I want to know about it, and you better have my permission. If my kid wants to change his gender, which is absurd, I need to know about that. I'm their parent.
That's absolutely right.
It doesn't matter what they're doing. I want to know about it. So anyway, that's part of the problem.
You know, we have had a half hour of good discussion so far on Zebeth Ranch, and my thanks go to a very, very dear friend. This man is so knowledgeable and so up on technology and technocracy that I absolutely appreciate and welcome him being a part of our program. John Ellis is absolutely first class. You know, again, I want to reiterate, we're going to touch any and all issues on this podcast, and we're not going to shy away from anything. And if you have any questions or you have some statements you'd like to make, I would welcome you to get a hold of me with an email at zeb@theranch@hotmail.com. Now, that Zeb at the Ranch is 4 words, Zeb, Z-E-B, @the ranch, THERANCH, and then, of course, at hotmail.com. So get a hold of us, and we'd love to hear from you on future broadcasts and podcasts of Zeb at the Ranch. I think Pastor Alex is at the microphone, and we're going to say good morning right now. If you could get real close to that mic, if you would. Pastor Alex Lissau, Zion Lutheran Church in Burley, Idaho, and why not God? We've done this a time or two in the past, haven't we?
We sure have, Zeb.
God bless you, man. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon. Good to see you as well. Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
As I was driving in, I don't know if you've heard this, but as I was driving in just a few minutes ago, within the last half hour, Charlie Kirk, who is speaking at Utah Valley State University, has been shot.
Oh, no.
And they say direct shot. They think it hit him in the neck. And that's as far as they've got information at this point as to the status as he's in. And you know, Charlie Kirk is one of the great conservative speakers and commentarians in our country. A faithful man, recent married with, well, not recent, but has children, been married a few years. And I was shocked to hear it, because he's one of the foremost standards for American freedom and rights, and it was just dramatic news. So I just thought I'd put that out there, because that certainly sets the tone for the day.
Well, you basically, and our prayers go out to not only Charlie, but his family and everyone around him. This is just the status of what we're talking about today. Everything is right now evolving around one word, I think, chaos. Would you agree or not?
Absolutely. And it's amazing how God works in his ways between you and I when we don't even talk about some things.
Absolutely.
In the subject. The word chaos is primary chaos and stupidity are the two things that have come up in my brain the last 24 hours. And as I was taking some notes and thinking about it, that's where we are as a country. We're on the edge, if not already a foot deep into anarchy. And I think in a lot of ways, what I cannot imagine and cannot understand, not only as a Christian and as a pastor, but as an American who honors my country and the rule of law, how this nation can survive without following the law. And we've seemed to have total chaos with regard to law anymore. Nobody, the judges don't want to comply with the law. The people are not complying with the law. This murder that just happened the other night in North Carolina, this guy's been arrested 14 times. And he sits down there, and here's this woman who has come from Ukraine, who escaped as a refugee with her family from Ukraine to come to America, to live the freedom and enjoy the life here. Young woman, beautiful young woman, goes in and gets on the train, commuter train, and she gets stabbed to death for no reason. And the worst thing for me, as I observed this in the news, was to see all of the people that were on that train car that did nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't step forward. They didn't defend her. They didn't attack the knife-bearing criminal. It was all, and they just got up and moved away as though they didn't want to be involved, and that's not America.
That's right. Why and how did we get so far away from any religious background and upbringing in this country founded upon Judeo-Christian principles and helping people, extending an open hand, giving a hand up, protecting other people? How did we get so far removed from this? And now it's been turned into, this murder has been turned into a political story. What in the world is going on here, Alex?
It is to me, and I think you guys were just talking about it. Homeschooling, university, public schools, all these different things that we've been addressing. I believe the foundations of education, beginning in the home, because the foundation of every family and everything about America is built upon family and home. And when it's not done right, when it's not properly raised, when the children are not educated nor encouraged or taught by example, and the things that are important about respect and reverence and responsibility, this is what we wind up. We're in a state of anarchy. We're in a state of ridiculousness and foolishness. We've walked away from God. The nation has walked away from God, and as a result of that, we have this unbelievable chaos running across. And every major city is in. To me, I cannot understand how someone responsible for the lives of people, elected to positions to be responsible for the lives of people, cannot want to have crime and all of those problems with crime removed from their communities. And here we've got governors and we've got mayors who are fighting against that. And to me, it's an example of godlessness.
Absolutely.
It's a complete lack of respect for life.
My lovely bride last night pulled off the internet a story that I so much appreciate that she found for me. It was written by a lady by the name of Mary Eberstadt. And the cover page says, "Regular Christians are no longer welcome in American culture." And the subheadline was, "It's dangerous to believe."
Hey, Tim Kaine, a senator from Virginia, said this just the other day, just a couple of days ago. He said that America is no longer a godly nation. America doesn't. It isn't by the providence of God, which is the foundational establishment of our nation. It isn't by the providence of God anymore. It's by the providence and power of the government. And I think that in itself, especially when you look at the liberalized form of government that we're dealing with and fighting with, 50% of our nation. Therein lies the major problem. It is what is destructive. And if you go back and look at history, and I've been doing some reading in history, non-biblical actually, but still involved with a lot of religion and biblical nuances, because it deals with the Revolutionary War and how America extricated itself from Great Britain and King George. And one of the things that George Washington himself declared, that the finger of God is on our nation, is a providence of God, and that is what gave them the strength, being the minor group of men and children, basically, because many of those soldiers were 15 and 14 years old. It was by the power of God alone that we overcame the great and massive power of the British government, which was the greatest in the world at the time.
Absolutely.
To become a free nation given by the providence of God. And where is that providence today? It's God still there, but the people are not listening to him.
Well, okay, that leads me right into what we wanted to talk about this morning. There are those on the left, and it looks like the Democratic Party is espousing this, that God is dead and Christians need to be mocked or pushed aside permanently. That's the feeling I'm getting from the Democratic Party. Are you?
That's the same language I'm hearing. That's the same discussions I'm hearing. And the sad part of it is that there's a lot of, and forgive me if you're offended by this, but I got to say it, there's a lot of people in the Christian church that are not understanding of this problem. They are not standing forward and saying enough is enough. We have to stop this. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about voting the right way, getting rid of the corruption. The one thing that I can say that has been visible to us in the last 6 months, since last November, actually, since the election of our current administration, is the amount, and I think we're overwhelmed by the degree of corruption and underhandedness and sin that is running rampant in our government.
Absolutely. You know, I don't know what to do to fight it. You and I have talked many, many times on my radio program about Why Not God. And the reason I came up with that title and invited you to be a part of that segment, Why Not God, was because people today are trying everything to get away from God, to get away from principles of family and wholesomeness and a good attitude of bringing their kids up. And that's why I think right now, why not God? Get back to what really needs to happen.
Absolutely. You know, as human beings, we all struggle with one issue. Nobody likes to really be told what to do. Now, if it's something that's good and beneficial, something that fits our category of life, then yeah, we'll accept that. In fact, we'll even hurrah it.
Yeah.
We'll go with it and try to build it up. But most of us are clearly defiant when it comes to somebody who's saying something and telling us exactly what it is they expect of us, especially if it doesn't fit within our category of life. And the problem with our society is that we become rebellious to the things that are important and critical for a calm, collected society of people that get along and live together, regardless of what their beliefs are.
We're told by the secular left that we must change our thinking. We must change our attitude. And then right now, when you walked in the room and mentioned to us that have not been able to listen to the newscast because we're on the air with this podcast right now, that Charlie Kirk was shot, and I pray for his health and his well-being.
Absolutely.
But he was outspoken for Christian values and family values, and they didn't like that. So they got to get rid of him. It's always easy for them to say we're going to get rid of anybody that's against us in their secular world, and that's why Christianity's under attack today.
Well, if you listen to the current ranting and raving of Bernie Sanders, that's the same thing you get. You know, what he's standing up for Mondami. He wants to get him elected in New York City as the mayor. He's standing up against, he says, he was pointing out today something like $1.8 trillion for defense spending, et cetera, et cetera. And what he's complaining about is, why don't we take a bunch of that money away from defense spending and build acceptable housing for the 800 million or whatever it is people in our 800,000 people in our country who are it's 800,000, not million, that are homeless and can't afford housing. And what he wants, to me, with the way in the state of the world, and you and I know, Zeb, from the news and everything we've been reading and seeing on the news, that the country is in big trouble because of the enemies that we face, not just within the borders of our country, but outside the borders as well. If we reduce our defense, we're asking for even more trouble than we have right now with the people that are in our country that don't belong here.
You came from Europe.
Yeah, man, I was born in Austria at the end of the Second World War.
And so you fled the tyranny and the dangers that were out to thwart and kill your family, quite frankly.
Yep.
So you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of that society. Why do people want to bring it here?
You know, somehow they think that that's not the way it's going to be. They're going to be in a democratic republic in which they believe that they've learned from all of the mistakes and the damages of the past, and that we can be a socialist country and a much better standard than most socialist countries. When we identify the total failures, centuries of failures, every time socialism and communism has ever taken over anywhere, the poverty and just those special people within the structure of these parties that are anti-American and anti-freedom, they're the ones that make all of the money and are the wealthy people, and the rest of us are all living and fighting over a loaf of bread because the grocery stores are empty and all those things, and it amazes me that anybody would want us to live in that. I mean, you know, the one thing, and I've said this to you a million times, I think, Zeb, the one thing we've learned from history is we haven't learned a blasted thing from history.
Right. Let me ask you this question. If you, as a immigrant to this great country, the United States of America, had the opportunity this afternoon to sit down at a table with Zoran Mondami back in New York City, and just really lay into him and his proposed policies of change for New York City and what it would do with a rippling effect across the United States because of your knowledge, what would you tell him?
Here's exactly what I would tell him. Micah, chapter 6, verses 8 through 9. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Listen, the Lord is calling to the city, and to fear your name is wisdom. Heed the rod and the one who appointed it.
Yeah.
That's what I would say to them. Because when you turn against God, when you take away everybody's right and freedom, when you don't allow them the foundations of what is right and just and proper, righteousness and truth, you're asking for exactly what we're seeing today.
Why is he getting so popular? Why are the Gen Zers flocking around him? Why are the Bernie Sanders and the AOCs out to promote him? Is this all a part of a globalist mindset to destroy the concept of America?
I believe that it's not just America, but I think it's the general concept of destroying the rights of man to make decisions for themselves, to live free and to pursue happiness, to have the right, as our own government says, you have the right to pursue happiness, and that's what we're given in this country. I don't know why they would want to remove that, because they themselves will suffer the same thing that they want to be removed. And I fear that the education and the upbringing, et cetera, of our young people, and that's where I think when Charlie Kirk gets shot at Utah Valley State University, that's a place of young people.
Yeah. I've been on that campus many times.
Yeah, it's the biggest campus in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
And as far as the population goes. But I mean, that's an example of what we've transpired into as a society. And how do you got to look to where it's coming from. First of all, the people that are giving us trouble in the government are the people we've elected into the government. Mm-hmm. And the people that are giving us trouble in the public are the people that are being raised by the people of our country. So where are we going? I love what you guys were talking about just a little bit earlier. Homeschooling, raising your family, teaching your children, those things. And it was a way of my family as well. All of my kids are strong Christian kids. The grandchildren are strong Christian. I get great-grandchildren now being raised in a strong Christian family. And everything that they learned at the kitchen table and in the living room. In fact, whenever and I remember this going back long before I became a pastor, as I sat there with my children watching a television program in the evening, and I saw something that was inappropriate, I would explain to them that that's not reality.
That's right.
That's stupidity.
That's right.
And that you should not practice it. In fact, let's change to something else. Let's watch volleyball, for Pete's sakes, rather than it. And I mean, volleyball's okay. Maybe I should say, let's watch soccer.
There's a thundercloud coming. But I want to ask you this, before we run out of time today, I want to get into politicians. How in the world AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Presley, Mondami, and others of that ilk, I can't imagine why the American public is not smart enough or can look back in our history or talk to their grandparents or their uncles and aunts. This is really, really serious as to what's happening like a cancer in this country. And it could be the total dissolvement of the greatest nation ever on the face of the earth.
My family, Zeb, from the day that I could even understand or comprehend anything, I knew, quite frankly, that they were dedicated Christians, believers in Jesus Christ as their Savior, and believer in God as the provider and creator of all things. And that's what survived our family. Unfortunately, my mother died in Austria when I was a little over a year old before we finally got on the ship and came to America, immigrated to the United States. And the one thing I remember vividly is how my father constantly related back to the importance of being a family of faith, relying upon God, Amen. Trusting the things that he has taught us.
Amen.
And in the importance of that, the things that were important to understand was that it is by the strength of a moral character, it is by the strength of honesty and truth and the ability to love your neighbor, to work together with others to the success and benefit of others. Those are the things that make our country great. Those are the things that provide us with opportunity. And every one of us has opportunity. But yet today, I think what's happening is much of our society wants something for nothing. And a lot of it, that nothing that I'm talking about, is a commitment to be able to pay the way in life. We have to pay the way in life.
Let me ask you as a pastor, and I think we've discussed this in past times, past programs. How would you rate where we are today on a 1 to 10 scale with the negativity coming off from the left and even the Democratic Party by many of their so-called leaders, mocking Christians and calling them bigots and haters because we will not conform to their worldviews and their gender-affirming views, that type of thing. We won't adhere to their programs because we still believe in the Bible, and they're doing all they can to eradicate us.
I believe that that's very true. And in fact, as we look at the different denominations and different whatever traditions that we look at in churches are concerned, we see a lot of differences from maybe the way it was 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Do we preach the gospel from the pulpit anymore? Do we preach the law and gospel? Do we preach out of the Old and New Testament? Do we teach lessons? Do we take what is taught to us out of Scripture and put it in the application of what is going on in our society today so that the people see the differences between right and wrong, good and evil?
Let me make a point right there and ask you to answer this. Is there fear in the pulpit?
Well, I believe that there is fear in the pulpit because I've heard pastors say, I don't know if that's a hill I want to die on. And I'm not sure as a pastor, if I'm living according to God's word, that there is a hill that I'm not willing to die on.
You've talked on previous programs on my radio show that the younger generation of pastors, and you and I both have said, and I'll take the blame for making this statement, that they're more aware and fearful of not having the money in the collection plate than they are really preaching the Word of God.
Yeah, I think that that's probably an issue. I don't want to paint everything with the same broad brush. There's obviously a lot of strong, and I read a lot of strong comments by a lot of good pastors. And even in the midst of California, there's some fantastic pastors preaching down there. I'm surprised that they're still alive in many cases. But the reality is this. If we don't preach the gospel, then we're willing to roll whatever punches are thrown at us. Or we're either that or we're going to do, and I've mentioned this to you before, as a pastor, I don't want to stand in the dark aisles off the stage. I want to be out in the front where I can talk to people directly. And I want to speak to them of truth. I'm not afraid of saying what is absolutely true as far as Scripture is concerned. The gospel is offensive to many people because it doesn't pull any punches. And the reality is that that's exactly what the people need to hear.
That's right.
Because if they're not hearing that, then they don't know. The very first process in solving a problem is to recognize you have one. And if nobody's teaching you that you have one, then you go by where you're going.
How far down the rabbit hole are we as far as society here in this country, the United States, accepting secular ideology and throwing Christianity into the pit?
Well, just look at us. Look at the data. I mean, the news is there. You see it every day, Zeb. So do I. The articles, etc. The what's going on around us. What's happening in the school system. What's happening in the major cities in Los Angeles and Minneapolis and Washington D.C. and all these places that are being attacked, and in the constant contradictions that are being thrown at us for when we're trying to do something better and proper. I think that there's a real problem. I'm not willing to give up because I believe God in one way or another is going to solve this problem.
I agree with that.
It may not be to the good, happy nature of our people. It may be a suffering situation, but then Scripture tells us that nothing good comes without certain suffering.
There are so many stories and instances, and I have a couple that I've written down here, where people have been very proud to profess their faith. The teacher in New Jersey that was suspended for giving a student a Bible, the football coach in Washington placed on leave for saying a prayer on the field at the end of the football game. Fire chief in Atlanta fired for self-publishing a book defending Christian morality teaching. The Marine court-martialed for pasting a Bible verse above her desk. All these are intolerances from the left that want to see Christianity completely removed from our social scene.
I agree.
How do we fight back?
Well, the battle is in the pulpit. The battle is in the home. The battle is not being silent to it, but standing up. And it has to be done not just locally here in our local communities, but it's got to be done all the way up the ladder. I read an article, if I may use this. I read an article by Dr. Gregory Seltz, who leads the Lutheran Center for Religious Liberty, and he wrote in this article. He said that trying to convince people that faith in the Word of God is the standard for a civil and successful society doesn't seem to matter as it once did. And then he goes on to say further on, I would argue, however, that the foundational principles of America and her constitutional freedoms make this culture one of the best policies for people from virtually every tribe and language. So he's saying that we still have the foundations of a great and powerful nation. What we have to do is we have to get the people to start moving in that direction and understanding it.
And it's got to start with our education.
It starts with the education and starts with us being faithful to God.
Amen. Amen. And taking little Johnny and Susie by the hand like the old Norman Rockwell picture on the front of the Saturday Evening Post, walking into the church on Sunday morning.
It's interesting because he also said, in the culture of our day, virtually everything has been publicized, vulgarized, idealized, demonized, and euphemized. There are indeed two radically different worldviews vying for the dominance in our culture. And one is particular that wants to silence us, to tell us to shut up.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do it.
You know, I want to talk to you real quick. You're going to be making the transition in your life before too long.
I am.
And I pray to the good Lord above that we'll be able to continue our relationship via the computer, thanks to this man of great technology sitting next to you. John Ellis is absolutely the man. And we've got it all figured out so that when you do move back to Tennessee, we're going to be able to conduct our Why Not God with you, and we can look at you on the screen just as if we were sitting right here in the studio.
That's certainly my hope and my plan. And in fact, last night I just had a conversation with my kids there in Columbia, Tennessee, and it was on my little cell phone, and they had me on there, and I could see myself, and I could see them and everything else. And my son looked at me, and he said, "My goodness, Dad, you look like Grizzly Adams." And I said, "Pardon me?" You know, but my son is 6'3" and weighs 280 pounds. I don't argue with him anymore. I did when he was younger, but not.
But quickly, this is a big change from Idaho to Tennessee.
Yeah, it is.
And I know the area that you're going to, Columbia, and it's really heavy into the country music and a lot of good rural people.
Yeah.
And this should
Church
be
on every
really
corner.
interesting.
Church on every corner. Yeah,
Isn't that wonderful?
It's a wonderful thing. It is. My son is very fortunate. He's a dean of students at a Christian school, and they're very happy and doing well. And as you know, Zeb, I'm going to turn 80 years old here in a couple of months. And one of the things that my son has said to me, and this is a God's gift to me, he said, "Dad, I want you to be close because I want to take care of you."
Absolutely. I love that. I'm going to miss you, buddy. Now, are you going to be able to come in the studio next week with us?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Pastor Alex Lissau with Why Not God. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Pastor, very much for being here. That's going to wrap up our first podcast with our dear friends John Ellis and Pastor Alex Lissau. I'm Zeb Bell. This is Zeb at the Ranch. And like I said, we're going to turn over any stone that's in the trail. We're going to make sure that we talk about any and all subjects, and we welcome your commentary. Don't forget, Zeb at the Ranch at hotmail.com, and we'll be right back in another week with another podcast. Don't go away, Zeb at the Ranch.